Welcome to Film Finance, the case file archive for the financial history of Hollywood. On this channel, we exclusively analyze films released more than 10 years ago, opening the closed books on their landmark financial stories. Today, we examine the production budget, the box office performance, and the long-term financial outcome of this noteworthy production. Let's open another case file. Welcome to Film Finance, the case file archive for the financial history of Hollywood. Before we open this critically important case file, for the many of you asking where to watch Man of Steel, 2013 today, the film currently resides as a cornerstone of the DC collection on the Max streaming service, and is also widely available for digital rent or purchase on major platforms. Now that you know where to watch this landmark movie, let's delve into its monumental history, because understanding this film is essential to understanding the last decade of the studio blockbuster. In the cinematic landscape of 2013, one shadow loomed larger than all others: the unprecedented $1.5 billion success of Marvel's The Avengers. That film had fundamentally altered the business of Hollywood, proving that a shared cinematic universe was the new gold standard. For its lifelong rival, Warner Bros. Pictures, the pressure was immense. Their own superhero dynasty, Christopher Nolan's critically and commercially adored Dark Knight trilogy, had just reached its conclusion. The studio found itself without a flagship, without a foundation for the interconnected future of its DC Comics properties. They needed an answer, and they needed it to be an industry-shaking event. That answer was to be a complete top-to-bottom reboot of the world's very first superhero. This is the full movie explained not as a story, but as a calculated business maneuver. This is the case file for Man of Steel. Released on June 14, 2013, the film was a statement of intent. The director, Zack Snyder, was a master of visceral, operatic visuals, known for the stylistic bravado of 300 and Watchmen. The creative shepherd of the project was Christopher Nolan himself, whose name alone promised a serious, grounded interpretation that had become the studio's signature. This was not a nostalgic throwback. It was a deliberate and forceful reimagining. The plot summary presents a far more conflicted and solitary hero than audiences had ever seen. We follow Cavill, an alien infant sent from the dying planet Krypton to Earth, where he is raised as Clark Kent by the loving Jonathan and Martha Kent. He is an outsider, struggling to reconcile his immense power with a world that he fears would reject him if it knew the truth. This internal journey is violently interrupted by the arrival of General Zod, a zealous Kryptonian military leader who sees Earth not as a new home, but as a foundation for a new Krypton at the cost of all human life. Clark is forced to make a choice: stand with the race that adopted him or the last remnants of the one he was born into. He must become Superman. The lead actor chosen for this demanding role was Henry Cavill, a performer with immense screen presence but not yet a household name, a gamble the studio hoped would allow the character, not the star, to define the film. He was surrounded by a cast of decorated veterans: Amy Adams as the tenacious reporter Lois Lane, Michael Shannon as the ferociously intense General Zod, Diane Lane and Kevin Costner as the Kents, and Oscar winner Russell Crowe as Superman's Kryptonian father Jor-El. This collection of talent signaled that Man of Steel, 2013, was being positioned not as a simple comic book movie, but as a prestigious science fiction epic, one of the year's must-watch movies. Its genre was more aligned with grand-scale alien invasion films, similar movies like Independence Day or War of the Worlds, than the colorful adventures of its predecessors. Our movie breakdown must begin with this crucial context. Warner Bros. Was attempting to build their universe not on the charm of a witty billionaire, as Marvel had, but on the mythological weight of a modern god. The official trailer was a masterpiece of marketing, setting a somber, almost melancholic tone. With its sweeping shots of a lonely Clark Kent, a powerful score from Hans Zimmer, and snippets of dialogue about his place in the world, it promised a film of profound emotional depth, before erupting into city-leveling destruction. This trailer told audiences that this was a Superman for a post-9/11 world, a hero grappling with immense power and consequence. For movie lovers and longtime movie fans, it was a tantalizing and divisive glimpse. Many saw it as a necessary evolution, a path toward making the character relevant again. Others feared it was a betrayal of the character's optimistic core. This debate would come to define the film's legacy. This was not just another summer action film. It was a cultural test case, a high-stakes referendum on what a superhero could and should be in the 21st century. The subsequent box office breakdown would be more than a measure of success. It would be the verdict. But behind this ambitious creative vision lay an equally audacious financial architecture, a plan built on a colossal production budget and even grander expectations. The reported production budget for Man of Steel was an immense $225 million. Top it that figure in its 2013 context, it was on par with Marvel's universe, capping the Avengers' $225 million. To put that figure in its 2013 context, it was on par with Marvel's universe capping the Avengers' $220 million, and just shy of Nolan's own epic finale, The Dark Knight Rises' $250 million. This number represented a supreme vote of confidence from Warner Bros. And its financing partner, Legendary Pictures. This was not merely an operational expense. It was a strategic capitalization of a cornerstone intellectual property. The financing structure was a classic studio co-production, a model designed to mitigate catastrophic financial risk. By partnering with Legendary, Warner Bros. Effectively sold a piece of the film's potential profits in exchange for Legendary covering a significant portion of the upfront cost. This meant both entities held a massive equity stake valuation in the project, a valuation that was intrinsically tied to the film's performance. If the movie succeeded, both of their stakes in the burgeoning DC cinematic universe would skyrocket. If it failed, both would suffer a significant write-down. This immense investment was predicated on an aggressive global gross forecast. Internally, studio projections were not aiming for mere profitability. They were targeting entry into the exclusive billion-dollar club. With the top competitor of the year, Iron Man 3, soaring past $1.2 billion, the benchmark had been set. The entire financial model for Man of Steel depended on it achieving a similar global event status. The film's success or failure would directly impact Warner Bros. Shareholder value, signaling to Wall Street whether they had a viable competitor to the Disney-owned Marvel machine. The core of this high-stakes bet was the belief that a darker, more complex Superman would unlock a new, broader international audience, dramatically increasing the film's cumulative income. However, achieving this forecast required overcoming the harsh realities of Hollywood accounting. The first major hurdle is distribution fees. Theaters keep, on average, 50% of domestic ticket sales and 60% or more from international markets. This means, as a rule of thumb, a film must gross at least double its production and marketing budget worldwide just to break even. With a $225 million production cost and an estimated $150 million in global marketing, Man of Steel carried an all-in cost of nearly $400 million. Therefore, its break-even point at the box office was likely in the vicinity of $750 to $800 million. This is the fundamental challenge that informs a studio's global gross forecast. They are not forecasting the total money the film makes, but the total it must make for their portion to become profitable. Every dollar earned below that $750 million threshold represented a potential loss on the initial investment. The film's ultimate box office performance would therefore determine not just its own ROI, return on investment, but the perceived franchise valuation of the entire DC extended universe before it had even truly begun. From meme references of its most iconic scenes to viral fan clips that sparked massive social media reactions, Man of Steel's cultural impact rivals any competitor's pop culture influence, creating fan engagement that lives on through TikTok clips and Reddit theories. While the studio's executives were focused on the box office ledger, the film was simultaneously generating a different, more chaotic form of value in the burgeoning ecosystem of social media. The cultural impact of Man of Steel is a fascinating case study because it was forged in the fires of debate. Unlike the almost universally beloved films of the early Marvel era, Zack Snyder's film was deeply polarizing, and it was this very division that guaranteed its long-term relevance. The conversation never stopped. One of the first and most significant viral moments came directly from the marketing, General Zod's chilling "You Are Not Alone" broadcast. This scene, where Zod hijacks global communications to deliver his ultimatum, was a masterclass in tension. It immediately became a shareable piece of media, with its distorted visuals and Shannon's menacing delivery spawning countless memes and parodies. It was the film's first major entry into the public consciousness, a moment of pure science fiction dread that set the tone for the entire story. However, the most debated and culturally significant moment was undoubtedly the film's climax. The decision for Superman to kill General Zod by snapping his neck became an immediate and enduring flashpoint for the entire superhero genre. For years, fan reactions have been split into two fiercely loyal camps. One side argues it was a betrayal of the character's fundamental moral code. The other defends it as a necessary, tragic choice that grounded this new Superman in a world of impossible decisions. This single act fueled a decade of video essays, forum arguments, and fan quotes defending both positions, ensuring Man of Steel remained a subject of intense discussion long after it left theaters. This passionate discourse was also fertile ground for fan theories. Because the film was designed as a launchpad, it was deliberately seeded with clues about a larger world, and fans meticulously deconstructed every frame. The most prominent of these Easter eggs explained was the presence of a Wayne Enterprises satellite, which Superman destroys during his fight with Zod. This was the first concrete link to Batman in this new universe, sending online communities into a frenzy and spawning elaborate theories about how and when the two titans would meet. Similarly, sharp-eyed viewers spotted logos for LexCorp on buildings and tanker trucks, confirming the inevitable arrival of Superman's arch-nemesis. These were not just clever nods. They were strategic pieces of world-building that invited the audience to become forensic analysts, poring over behind-the-scenes photos and trailer stills to piece together the future of the DC universe. The intense speculation on Reddit theories boards became a form of fan-driven marketing, building anticipation for sequels before they were even officially announced. These iconic moments, the first flight, the Smallville battle, the final choice, were not just scenes in a movie. They became foundational texts for a new generation of DC fans to analyze, debate, and celebrate. This decade-long digital conversation, however, was not just cultural noise. From a financial perspective, it was the engine of significant, long-term asset appreciation. This phenomenon is best understood through the lens of viral marketing ROI. While Warner Bros. Spent an estimated $150 million on traditional marketing in 2013, the film has since benefited from what amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in free, organic advertising generated by fans. Every video essay, every Reddit thread, every meme acts as an unpaid ad, keeping the Man of Steel IP relevant and in the public eye. This constant engagement ensures the film never truly fades, creating immense long-term value. This directly translates into a quantifiable CPM uplift from engagement. Content creators on platforms like YouTube know that a video analyzing the controversial ending of Man of Steel will generate passionate comments and high watch times. This high engagement signals to the platform's algorithm that the content is valuable, which in turn allows for higher advertising rates or CPMs. The film's divisiveness, therefore, creates a more valuable advertising ecosystem around its IP. This sustained relevance drives tangible engagement-driven revenue streams years after the initial release. Anniversary edition Blu-rays, 4K restorations, and curated streaming events are far more successful for a film that is still being actively debated. Furthermore, this enduring status creates a significant IP licensing premium. When a brand considers a partnership with the Superman IP today, the version from Man of Steel remains one of its most prominent modern incarnations. Keystat, a film's enduring, albeit divisive, cultural impact can increase its lifetime value, LTV, by an estimated 20-25% through sustained, organic fan engagement. This means that the brand partnership value for a collaboration is likely higher, because the film's constant presence in online discourse has maintained its cultural currency. The long-tail viral marketing ROI of Man of Steel demonstrates a crucial lesson. In the modern media landscape, a passionate, engaged audience, even a divided one, can be a more valuable long-term asset than a quietly accepted blockbuster that is quickly forgotten. From meme references of its most iconic scenes to viral fan clips that sparked massive social media reactions, Man of Steel's cultural impact rivals any competitor's pop culture influence, creating fan engagement that lives on through TikTok clips and Reddit theories. While the studio's executives were focused on the box office ledger, the film was simultaneously generating a different, more chaotic form of value in the burgeoning ecosystem of social media. The cultural impact of Man of Steel is a fascinating case study because it was forged in the fires of debate. Unlike the almost universally beloved films of the early Marvel era, Zack Snyder's film was deeply polarizing, and it was this very division that guaranteed its long-term relevance. The conversation never stopped. One of the first and most significant viral moments came directly from the marketing, General Zod's chilling "You Are Not Alone" broadcast. This scene, where Zod hijacks global communications to deliver his ultimatum, was a masterclass in tension. It immediately became a shareable piece of media, with its distorted visuals and Michael Shannon's menacing delivery spawning countless memes and parodies. It was the film's first major entry into the public consciousness, a moment of pure science fiction dread that set the tone for the entire story. However, the most debated and culturally significant moment was undoubtedly the film's climax. The decision for Superman to kill General Zod by snapping his neck became an immediate and enduring flashpoint for the entire superhero genre. For years, fan reactions have been split into two fiercely loyal camps. One side argues it was a betrayal of the character's fundamental moral code. The other defends it as a necessary, tragic choice that grounded this new Superman in a world of impossible decisions. This single act fueled a decade of video essays, forum arguments, and fan quotes defending both positions, ensuring Man of Steel remained a subject of intense discussion long after it left theaters. This passionate discourse was also fertile ground for fan theories. Because the film was designed as a launchpad, it was deliberately seeded with clues about a larger world, and fans meticulously deconstructed every frame. The most prominent of these Easter eggs explained was the presence of a Wayne Enterprises satellite, which Superman destroys during his fight with Zod. This was the first concrete link to Batman in this new universe, sending online communities into a frenzy and spawning elaborate theories about how and when the two titans would meet. Similarly, sharp-eyed viewers spotted logos for LexCorp on buildings and tanker trucks, confirming the inevitable arrival of Superman's arch-nemesis. These were not just clever nods. They were strategic pieces of world-building that invited the audience to become forensic analysts, poring over behind-the-scenes photos and trailer stills to piece together the future of the DC universe. The intense speculation on Reddit theories boards became a form of fan-driven marketing, building anticipation for sequels before they were even officially announced. These iconic moments, the first flight, the Smallville battle, the final choice, were not just scenes in a movie. They became foundational texts for a new generation of DC fans to analyze, debate, and celebrate. This decade-long digital conversation, however, was not just cultural noise. From a financial perspective, it was the engine of significant, long-term asset appreciation. This phenomenon is best understood through the lens of viral marketing ROI. While Warner Bros. Spent an estimated $150 million on traditional marketing in 2013, the film has since benefited from what amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in free, organic advertising generated by fans. Every video essay, every Reddit thread, every meme acts as an unpaid ad, keeping the Man of Steel IP relevant and in the public eye. This constant engagement ensures the film never truly fades, creating immense long-term value. This directly translates into a quantifiable CPM uplift from engagement. Content creators on platforms like YouTube know that a video analyzing the controversial ending of Man of Steel will generate passionate comments and high watch times. This high engagement signals to the platform's algorithm that the content is valuable, which in turn allows for higher advertising rates or CPMs. The film's divisiveness, therefore, creates a more valuable advertising ecosystem around its IP. This sustained relevance drives tangible engagement-driven revenue streams years after the initial release. Anniversary edition Blu-rays, 4K restorations, and curated streaming events are far more successful for a film that is still being actively debated. Furthermore, this enduring status creates a significant IP licensing premium. When a brand considers a partnership with the Superman IP today, the version from Man of Steel remains one of its most prominent modern incarnations. Keystat, a film's enduring, albeit divisive cultural impact can increase its lifetime value, LTV, by an estimated 20-25% through sustained, organic fan engagement. This means that the brand partnership value for a collaboration is likely higher, because the film's constant presence in online discourse has maintained its cultural currency. The long-tail viral marketing ROI of Man of Steel demonstrates a crucial lesson. In the modern media landscape, a passionate, engaged audience, even a divided one, can be a more valuable long-term asset than a quietly accepted blockbuster that is quickly forgotten. If the passionate fan discourse surrounding Man of Steel was a wildfire of cultural debate, the official critical reception was a sudden and decisive cold front. The story of the film's recognition is not one of glittering accolades or festival circuits, but one of a stark and historically significant divide between professional critic reviews and passionate audience scores. This chasm would come to define not only the legacy of Zack Snyder's film, but also the trajectory of the entire DC extended universe. From the moment the review embargo lifted, it was clear that the very elements some fans would champion, its somber tone, its deconstruction of the hero, its brutalist action, were the precise points of contention for a majority of film critics. The ultimate data point, the one that would be cited in countless articles and videos for the next decade, was its official Rotten Tomatoes score. Man of Steel landed with a score of 56% on the tomatometer, branding it with the Rotten label. For a film with a $225 million budget and the ambitions of launching an entire cinematic universe, this was a significant blow. Our movie breakdown of the critic reviews reveals a consistent pattern of critique. Many reviewers found the film to be overly serious, joyless, and emotionally cold, arguing that in the effort to ground Superman in reality, the filmmakers had stripped him of the hope and optimism that defined the character. A frequent point of criticism was the film's visual palette and relentless large-scale destruction, particularly in the third-act battle between Superman and Zod. Words like overwhelming, numbing, and excessive appeared in numerous reviews, with many taking issue with the perceived disregard for civilian casualties, a critique that would directly influence the plot of its sequel. The final, controversial neck snap was the culmination of these concerns for many critics, who saw it as a fundamental misunderstanding of the hero's ethos. Consequently, any potential for mainstream awards buzz in major categories was extinguished almost immediately. There would be no talk of Oscars nominations for its screenplay or direction, nor any Golden Globe wins for its dramatic performances. Yet this tells only half the story. While the critical consensus was lukewarm at best, the audience scores painted a very different picture. The film received a B+ cinema score, a respectable if not spectacular grade from opening night crowds. On Rotten Tomatoes itself, the audience ratings settled at a much healthier 75%, and on platforms like IMDb, it holds a strong score to this day. This disconnect is the key to understanding the film's legacy. The audience, particularly younger viewers and those craving a departure from previous interpretations, responded powerfully to the very things critics dismissed. They saw the destructive final battle not as numbing, but as the first cinematic depiction of what a fight between beings of this power level would actually look like. They interpreted the somber tone not as joyless, but as a reflection of the realistic emotional weight of being an alien god among mortals. For this significant portion of the viewership, Man of Steel was one of the must-watch films of the year, a bold and visually stunning epic that finally treated the character with the dramatic seriousness they felt he deserved. While it failed to achieve the status of top-rated movies among critics, it quickly became a fan favorite, a foundational text for a new generation of DC enthusiasts. This schism between the professional arbiters of taste and a deeply invested public ensured that Man of Steel would never be simply dismissed. It was destined to be debated, defended, and re-examined for years to come. This critical divide had immediate and profound financial implications, particularly in how it influenced the film's potential for long-term value appreciation. In Hollywood finance, major awards are not just trophies. They are a powerful ROI multiplier. However, to even compete for these awards requires a significant investment. A robust award campaign cost in that era, with for your consideration ads, press screenings, and talent campaigning, could easily run a studio between $5 million and $15 million for a film of this scale. Because of the immediate and divisive critic reviews, Warner Bros. Was spared this expense. But in doing so, they lost the opportunity for a much greater financial prize. The most direct impact was the loss of a potential post-award revenue boost. Historically, a film that receives a Best Picture nomination can see a box office bump of $10 to $20 million in the weeks leading up to the ceremony. A win could be worth even more, not to mention the Academy Award winner seal on home video releases, which significantly drives sales. Man of Steel was denied this entire revenue stream. More importantly, the mixed reviews neutered the film's critical acclaim multiplier, a crucial factor in an asset's long-term licensing value. Studios leverage strong critical consensus to command prestige pricing for their library titles in television and streaming deals. A film with a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes is simply a more valuable commodity than one with a 56%. It can be marketed as a critically acclaimed classic, justifying a higher licensing fee. While the Superman IP-insured Man of Steel would always be in demand, its critical reputation likely placed a ceiling on its value. The lack of glowing reviews represented a missed opportunity for a significant ROI uplift from critical acclaim. Key stat: critically acclaimed blockbusters like Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight have historically commanded a 20–30% premium in ancillary markets like international television rights over critically divisive counterparts. This demonstrates how the critical acclaim multiplier directly impacts the lifetime value, LTV, of a cinematic asset. For Man of Steel, the verdict was clear. While it was a commercial success, its inability to win over critics represented a tangible multi-million-dollar opportunity cost that would affect its balance sheet for years to follow. As Man of Steel cements its film legacy with franchise potential that rivals any competitor's universe expansion, fans speculate on sequels and spin-off ideas, while the director's next projects and upcoming movies hint at a thrilling, albeit controversial, future. To render a final verdict on this film is to assess it not as a standalone entity, but as a cornerstone, a deeply flawed but historically essential foundation upon which a multi-billion-dollar empire was built. Its lasting impact is a complex tapestry woven from creative ambition, financial necessity, and the monumental weight of audience expectation. The film's commercial performance, a solid but unspectacular $668 million worldwide, was a moderate success that simultaneously fell short of its billion-dollar aspirations. This created a paradoxical legacy, a film profitable enough to justify a future, but divisive enough to make that future uncertain. The immediate and most significant consequence of this qualified success was the studio's decision to abandon a direct sequel in favor of a rapid acceleration of their franchise roadmap. The original franchise potential envisioned was likely a trilogy of Superman films, gradually introducing other heroes. But with Marvel's The Avengers already a global phenomenon, Warner Bros. Felt they were years behind. They needed to achieve universe expansion at an unprecedented speed. The result was 2016's Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. This was not the organic sequel many anticipated, it was a strategic pivot. The studio brought in their most bankable asset, Batman, to bolster the new universe and fast-track the formation of the Justice League. This decision is a crucial part of our movie breakdown of Man of Steel's legacy, as the sequel was a direct narrative and thematic response to the first film's controversies. The ending explained of Man of Steel became the inciting incident for its successor. The catastrophic destruction of Metropolis and Superman's choice to kill General Zod were not ignored. They became the very reasons for Bruce Wayne's crusade against the alien. This created a tightly woven, albeit grim, two-part prologue for the DC Extended Universe. The sequels that followed, from Suicide Squad to Wonder Woman and Aquaman, all exist within the world established by Man of Steel. Zack Snyder's distinct visual aesthetic, the desaturated color palette, the operatic slow motion, the sense of mythological grandeur became the default visual language for the early years of the DCEU. This stylistic continuity is a core component of the film's cinematic impact. Whether loved or loathed, it gave the universe a unique and recognizable identity, starkly different from its more colorful competitor. Over the years, fan anticipation for a true, direct sequel to Man of Steel never fully subsided. Rumored plotlines consistently surfaced, often involving classic Superman villains like Brainiac, who was seen as the logical next step after Zod's terrestrial threat. These spin-off ideas and sequel concepts became a cottage industry for fan creators, generating countless videos and articles that kept the hope for Henry Cavill's return alive. The journey of the director's next projects is inextricably linked to this legacy. Zack Snyder would go on to direct Batman v Superman and his version of Justice League, completing the arc he began in 2013. The very existence of the Snyder Cut of Justice League is a testament to the passionate, enduring fanbase that was first galvanized by Man of Steel. Ultimately, the film legacy of Man of Steel is that of a grand, divisive, and deeply influential experiment. It successfully rebooted Superman for a new generation and laid the foundational lore for a sprawling cinematic universe. However, its controversial tone and storytelling choices created a schism in the fan base and a reactive, often turbulent creative strategy from the studio. It did not launch the DCEU with the same universal acclaim as Iron Man did for Marvel, but its impact was arguably just as profound. It forced a conversation about the nature of heroism, the consequences of power, and the responsibility of storytellers in a post-9/11 world. While no direct sequels ever materialized in the way fans hoped, the entire DC film slate for the following decade stands as its successor, each film a ripple from the monumental impact of Man of Steel. From a purely financial perspective, the final verdict on the Man of Steel investment can only be understood through a cumulative yield analysis. This is the process of looking beyond a single film's profit and loss statement to measure the total financial output of the intellectual property it activated. On its own, Man of Steel was a modest success, likely generating a net profit of around $150 million after all costs and revenue streams are accounted for. This represents a respectable but not spectacular ROI multiplier of approximately 1.4x on its initial $400 million investment. If the story ended there, it would be considered a minor win. But the film was never intended to be a standalone asset. It was the initial capital expenditure in a far larger enterprise, the DC Extended Universe. Every subsequent film in the DCEU must be viewed as an ROI multiplier building upon that foundational investment. The first and most critical was Batman v Superman. Despite its own divisive reception, the film grossed over $873 million worldwide. While the sequel investment risk was enormous with a budget and marketing cost well over $450 million, it successfully generated hundreds of millions in profit, proving the franchise model was commercially viable. Then came Wonder Woman, a critical and commercial smash hit that grossed $822 million on a much smaller budget, representing a massive ROI multiplier. The most significant multiplier of all was 2018's Aquaman, which stunned the industry by crossing the billion-dollar mark. This is the power of a cumulative yield analysis. The modest profit from Man of Steel becomes the seed capital for a franchise that, across its first wave of films, generated over $6 billion in global box office revenue. When projecting the long-term franchise ROI, one must consider the entire ecosystem. The total production and marketing costs for the first phase of the DCEU, from Man of Steel through Aquaman, can be estimated at roughly $2.5 billion. The total theatrical net revenue for Warner Bros. From that $6 billion gross would be in the vicinity of $2.4 billion. This means the films nearly broke even on theatrical alone, a remarkable feat. The true profit comes from the ancillary markets, home entertainment, television rights, and merchandising for 6 blockbuster films. A conservative estimate would place the total profit from this entire cycle in the range of $1.5 to $2 billion. Therefore, the initial $225 million bet on Man of Steel ultimately unlocked a franchise that delivered a long-term franchise ROI of 5x to 7x, the total capital invested across all films. This is a clear financial victory for the studio. However, this analysis must also account for the IP lifecycle value, which is the total estimated worth of the intellectual property over its entire lifespan. While the DCEU was profitable, the constant creative battles, critical divisions, and changes in leadership arguably suppressed the franchise's total potential value. Key stat: top-tier, critically aligned franchises like the Marvel Cinematic Universe often trade at a valuation multiplier of 4-5x their average annual earnings, whereas controversial or inconsistent franchises may trade closer to 2-3x. The immense sequel investment risk associated with each DCEU film, the constant fear that a misstep could derail the entire enterprise, made it a more volatile and less predictable asset than its primary competitor. The final cumulative yield analysis reveals a complex truth. Man of Steel was an enormously successful investment, not for the money it made, but for the money it enabled. It was the high-risk catalyst that unlocked billions in legacy revenue streams. It served its primary financial purpose: to establish a viable cinematic universe that could generate significant returns for shareholder value. Yet the legacy is also one of opportunity cost. The divisive foundation it laid created a ceiling on its potential, leading to a profitable but turbulent franchise that never quite reached the stratospheric, stable financial stratosphere of its rival. The verdict is clear. It was a good investment that, with a more unified creative and critical reception, could have been one of the greatest in modern Hollywood history. To render a final verdict on Man of Steel, one must inevitably return to its final 10 minutes. This is the crucible in which its entire legacy was forged. For any comprehensive discussion of the Man of Steel ending explained, a full spoilers warning is not just a courtesy. It is an absolute necessity, because the film's conclusion was not merely an ending, but a foundational event that would dictate the course of a cinematic universe for the next decade. The debate, the controversy, and the immense franchise potential all spring from a single, desperate, and violent act. This sequence, more than any other, is the reason the film is still so intensely analyzed today, and it's why searches for the Man of Steel ending explained remain so consistently high years after its release. To understand it, we must break it down moment by agonizing moment. The final confrontation between Superman and General Zod is not a triumphant battle, it is a brutal city-leveling war of attrition. After the destruction of the world engine and the Kryptonian ship Black Zero, the conflict becomes deeply personal. It culminates inside the ruins of Metropolis's Central Station, a location that becomes a microcosm for the film's central theme: the collision of old-world mythology with modern-day consequence. Here, Zod, having just mastered heat vision, unleashes it with apocalyptic fury on a terrified family cornered in the station. This is the critical juncture of the Man of Steel ending explained. Zod screams at Superman, "If you love these people so much, you can mourn for them." He makes it an impossible choice. Allow Zod to incinerate this family or stop him by any means necessary. For several agonizing seconds, Superman strains, holding Zod in a headlock, pleading with him to stop. Zod refuses, his eyes glowing with murderous intent. With no other option and with the screams of the family echoing in his ears, Superman twists Zod's neck. The sound is sharp, definitive, and then silence. What follows is perhaps the most important character moment in the film. Superman does not strike a heroic pose. He does not dust himself off. He falls to his knees and lets out a scream of pure, unadulterated anguish. It is a scream of grief, of horror at what he has been forced to do. This moment is the narrative twist ending of Man of Steel. The twist is not a plot point, it is a profound and shocking revelation of character and theme. The twist is that this new Superman, in his very first public act of heroism, has been forced to take a life to save others. This single act recontextualizes the entire film, transforming it from a simple hero's journey into a modern tragedy. It established from the very beginning that this universe would operate under a harsher, more consequential set of rules. This act, this choice, is the absolute core of the Man of Steel ending explained, and the source of its most enduring controversies and Man of Steel fan theories. Immediately following the film's release, Man of Steel fan theories erupted online, many attempting to recontextualize or even undo this controversial climax. One of the most persistent early theories was that Zod was not truly dead. Proponents of this idea argued that Kryptonian physiology might be more resilient, or that the snap only paralyzed him, allowing for his return in future sequels. This theory was born from a place of hope, from a desire for a Superman who adhered to the traditional no-kill rule. It was, however, quickly debunked by the filmmakers, who confirmed Zod's death was final and essential to Superman's journey. This confirmation only intensified the debate, solidifying the ending as a permanent and unchangeable part of this new canon. Perhaps the most compelling and well-supported of the historical Man of Steel fan theories concerned the identity of a different Kryptonian. A tie-in prequel comic book released alongside the film depicted a flashback to a Kryptonian scout ship, the very same ship Clark discovers in the Arctic. In the comic, a member of the House of El, Kara Zor-El, better known as Supergirl, is shown as the ship's commander. Crucially, the comic shows an open, empty stasis pod aboard that ship. This sent fans into a frenzy. The theory was that Supergirl had already arrived on Earth thousands of years before her cousin and was in hiding somewhere. This wasn't just baseless speculation, it was a carefully planted seed for universe expansion. Fans scoured the film for clues, and this theory gave a deeper meaning to Clark's discovery of the ship. It suggested that a crucial piece of the DC universe was already on the board, waiting to be revealed. This theory regarding rumored plotlines for potential sequels was so popular and well-founded that it would eventually be paid off, albeit years later in the DCEU's The Flash. Another significant aspect of the film's conclusion was its deliberate lack of a post-credit scene. In 2013, in the wake of the Avengers, the post-credit scene had become an industry standard, a fun, winking promise of what was to come. Man of Steel's choice to omit one was a powerful statement. It reinforced the film's serious, self-contained tone. It refused to cheapen its tragic ending with a quippy cameo. Instead, the setup for the future was embedded within the film's final scenes. The destruction of the drone belonging to General Zod establishes Superman's uneasy relationship with the U.S. government, a major plot point for future installments. The final scene, with Clark Kent putting on his glasses and walking into the Daily Planet for the first time, was the film's true promise of sequels. It wasn't a teaser. It was a conclusion that doubled as a new beginning, confirming his dual identity and setting the stage for his life as both a hero and a man. This ending, filled with spoilers but also rich with thematic weight, was the definitive launch of a new era. The Man of Steel ending explained is not just about a fight. It's about a painful birth of a hero and the complex, dangerous world he was destined to protect. This complex finale was the ultimate catalyst for the planned universe expansion, setting up a world where heroes were not universally trusted and their actions had devastating, lasting consequences. From a studio investor's perspective, the final 10 minutes of Man of Steel represented a high-stakes gamble on the very nature of the intellectual property. The ending must be analyzed not just for its narrative impact, but for its direct influence on the franchise IP worth and its roadmap for future content monetization. The first metric to apply is a sequel potential score, which for Man of Steel must be rated as high but with extreme creative risk. The high potential is undeniable. The ending left the world fundamentally changed. Aliens are real, Metropolis is in ruins, and Superman is a known, controversial figure. This created a fertile ground for countless stories. The explicit introduction of LexCorp and the Wayne Enterprises satellite were direct, actionable hooks for a sequel. This setup immediately increased the short-term IP valuation of the newly launched DC Cinematic Universe by providing a clear, high-conflict path forward. However, the extreme creative risk of the ending cannot be overstated. The decision to have Superman kill Zod was a monumental choice that carried a significant risk-return ratio. The potential return was the creation of a more mature, modern, and dramatically compelling franchise that could appeal to an older demographic, distinct from its primary competitor. The risk was catastrophic, alienating the massive, multi-generational fan base that viewed Superman's unwavering moral code as his defining and most marketable characteristic. This act had the potential to damage the core brand identity of the Superman IP, a blue-chip asset for Warner Bros., potentially lowering its long-term IP lifecycle value. This decision fundamentally altered the franchise roadmap. Instead of a triumphant hero embarking on new adventures, the studio was now launching its universe with a traumatized hero who would have to justify his very existence in the next film. This high-risk ending dictated the primary strategy for content monetization for the next 3 years. The most lucrative path forward was no longer a simple Man of Steel 2. The controversy and destruction provided the perfect narrative justification for an even bigger, more financially promising event: a conflict with Batman. This decision was a masterstroke of leveraging a creative risk for a massive financial reward. Batman v Superman became the ultimate vehicle for content monetization, bringing in a second A-list IP to both bolster and respond to the first film's divisive conclusion. Key stat: crossover films featuring two marquee characters, like the Avengers or Batman v Superman, have historically grossed an average of 40–50% more at the global box office than the solo films that preceded them. The ending of Man of Steel effectively served as the billion-dollar marketing campaign for its successor. Looking at the franchise roadmap as it likely appeared in mid-2013, the ending provided a clear, if treacherous, path. It established a world ripe for government oversight stories, leading to Amanda Waller and the Suicide Squad, stories about mythological beings stepping out of the shadows, Wonder Woman, and stories about the world's reaction to a godlike being, Batman v Superman. Each of these pathways represented a distinct opportunity for content monetization that stemmed directly from the world built in the final act of Man of Steel. The discovery of the Kryptonian scout ship alone created immense potential franchise equity valuation, suggesting an entire cosmic backstory waiting to be explored through prequels or spin-offs like Supergirl. The final IP valuation of the DCEU, for better or worse, is intrinsically linked to this ending. It was the decision that sacrificed universal appeal for narrative grit, a choice that created a financially successful but perpetually turbulent franchise. The long-term franchise IP worth was undeniably secured, but the cost was a permanent and passionate division in the very audience it was meant to unite. Beyond the on-screen narrative and the heated online debates, the legacy of a modern blockbuster is also measured in the tangible artifacts it leaves behind in the real world. For Man of Steel, the strategy for official merchandise and the cultivation of fan engagement was a direct reflection of the film's aesthetic: sleek, modern, and serious. The campaign was a far cry from the bright, primary-colored lunchboxes of previous Superman eras. This was an initiative designed to appeal to both a new generation of younger fans and the lucrative adult collector market, creating a vast ecosystem of movie collectibles that mirrored the film's darker, more textured universe. Our movie breakdown would be incomplete without examining this critical and highly profitable dimension of the film's release. The anchor of the official merchandise program was, as is tradition, the line of action figures. Mattel, the master toy licensee, produced a wide range of figures, but the centerpiece was the Movie Masters line, a series aimed directly at collectors. These weren't simple toys. They were detailed, screen-accurate sculpts that captured the intricate chainmail-like texture of Henry Cavill's Superman suit and the menacing biomechanical armor of General Zod. This focus on detail was a key part of the merchandise hype. Behind-the-scenes featurettes and early-look photos showcased the craftsmanship, building anticipation among collectors. Beyond the mass-market lines, high-end companies like Hot Toys and Sideshow Collectibles produced breathtakingly realistic 1/6 scale figures, with price points in the hundreds of dollars, cementing the film's status as a premium property. These high-end movie collectibles remain sought after pieces on the secondary market today, a testament to their initial quality and enduring appeal. However, the most powerful driver of the film's long-term relevance was its organic fan engagement. The film's striking visual identity provided a rich canvas for fan creativity. The new Superman suit, with its controversial lack of red trunks and its alien aesthetic, became an instant and popular subject for cosplay. Fan conventions in the years following 2013 saw countless fans attempting to replicate the suit's unique texturing and muscle shading, sharing their progress and techniques through social media campaigns that were entirely fan-driven. This visual anchor also led to an explosion of fan art. Artists online were captivated by Zack Snyder's imagery, the raw power of the first flight, the desolate beauty of Krypton, the apocalyptic scale of the final battle. This fan-created content served as a constant free marketing engine, keeping the film in the cultural conversation. The iconic S shield, redesigned for the film to be an alien family crest, became one of the most popular pieces of themed apparel, appearing on everything from t-shirts to high-end leather jackets. Unlike a simple marketing campaign, this deep fan engagement created a self-sustaining culture around the film, ensuring its imagery and themes would endure long after the initial promotional push had ended. This explosion of fan creativity and consumer demand is not an accidental byproduct. It is the intended outcome of a sophisticated and highly lucrative business model centered on licensing and royalties. When a studio like Warner Bros. Allows a company like Mattel to produce toys, they are not in the business of manufacturing plastic. They are in the business of renting their intellectual property. The core mechanism for this is the licensed product royalty. This is a fee typically ranging from 8% to 15% of the wholesale price of a product that is paid directly back to the studio. This is an exceptionally high-margin revenue stream, as the studio bears none of the manufacturing, distribution, or marketing costs for the products themselves. For Man of Steel, with hundreds of millions of dollars in projected sales for its merchandise globally, this represented a massive, low-risk infusion of pure profit. The success of this model hinges on strong retail partnerships. In 2013, securing prominent shelf space at global giants like Walmart, Target, and Toys R Us was paramount. These deals for retail partnership revenue are complex negotiations, but their goal is simple: to ensure that when a family walks into a store, the official merchandise for Man of Steel is visible and accessible. The sheer volume of product moved through these channels is what transforms a licensing program from a side business into a major financial pillar of the film's overall success. A robust merchandising program is a powerful indicator of a film's cultural penetration and a direct contributor to its merchandise ROI. Ultimately, the entire merchandising ecosystem is powered by fan-driven ROI. The passion of the fan base is a quantifiable financial asset. It is the fan who cosplays the character who also buys the high-end collectible. It is the fan who creates art who also buys the art book and the t-shirt. This organic enthusiasm creates a predictable and highly motivated consumer base, reducing the risk for both the studio and its licensing partners. Key stat: for an evergreen superhero property, the cumulative branded toy revenue over a 20-year period can often exceed the film's original production budget, representing one of the most efficient forms of fan-driven ROI in the industry. The enduring debate and passion surrounding Man of Steel ensured that its merchandise had a shelf life far beyond its theatrical run, creating a long-tail licensed product royalty stream that continues to contribute to the film's cumulative earnings to this day. To truly understand the financial and cultural case file of Man of Steel, we must first deconstruct the asset itself. This is the Man of Steel story breakdown, a comprehensive narrative breakdown that examines not just what happens, but how the film's unique structure, visual style, and thematic preoccupations created the divisive but powerful experience that defined a franchise. This is the full movie explained chronologically, a deep dive into the screenplay and cinematography that made this one of the most debated blockbusters of its era. A full spoilers warning is in effect as we analyze the film's architecture from its chaotic opening to its city-shattering climax. The film does not begin on a sun-drenched Kansas farm. It begins in fire and chaos. The opening act of the Man of Steel plot summary is a startling and immersive science fiction epic set entirely on a dying Krypton. Director Zack Snyder and his director of photography, Amir Mokri, immediately established the film's distinct visual style. Handheld documentary-style camera work that gives the alien world a visceral, immediate reality. This is not the crystalline, sterile Krypton of the past. It is a world of organic technology, strange creatures, and a society on the brink of collapse. The cinematography here is crucial. It grounds the fantastical in a gritty, tactile aesthetic. We are introduced to Jor-El, a brilliant scientist, as he pleads with Krypton's ruling council to heed his warnings of the planet's imminent implosion. They dismiss him, trapped in their rigid traditions. This opening sequence is a masterclass in world building, establishing the film's core movie themes: the conflict between choice and destiny, tradition versus progress, and the catastrophic consequences of hubris. This political drama is violently interrupted by a military coup led by General Zod. This is one of the iconic scenes explained. Jor-El and Zod, once friends, now stand as ideological opposites. Jor-El believes in the potential of natural birth and free will, while Zod is a product of Krypton's eugenics program. bred to be a warrior and utterly devoted to preserving the Kryptonian bloodline at any cost. Their conflict is not simple good versus evil. It is a clash of two desperate, competing philosophies for survival. In a pivotal moment, Jor-El steals the Growth Codex, the genetic blueprint for all future Kryptonians, and infuses it into the cells of his newborn son, Kal-El, the first natural birth on Krypton in centuries. He then places Kal-El in a ship bound for Earth, making his son not just a refugee, but the living embodiment of his entire race's future. The screenplay analysis of this section reveals a story structure more akin to a political thriller than a superhero origin. The destruction of Krypton is not a brief prologue. It is a fully realized tragic downfall that provides the essential psychological and mythological weight for everything that follows. The film then shatters its own timeline, a narrative choice that was both bold and controversial. Instead of a linear progression from childhood to adulthood, the screenplay, written by David S. Goyer from a story he co-developed with Christopher Nolan, adopts a nonlinear structure reminiscent of Nolan's own Batman Begins. We meet the adult Clark Kent, a bearded drifter moving from job to job, haunted by his inability to reveal his true self. This is where the film's central emotional conflict is established. As Clark performs anonymous acts of heroism saving workers on a burning oil rig, for instance, the narrative flashes back to key moments in his childhood in Smallville. These flashbacks are the heart of the film's narrative breakdown. We see a young Clark overwhelmed by his powers, his super hearing a cacophony of terrifying noise, until his mother, Martha Kent, teaches him to focus. In another one of the film's most memorable scenes, a teenage Clark saves a bus full of his classmates from drowning, an act for which his adoptive father, Jonathan Kent, chastises him, fearing what the world would do if they discovered his secret. Jonathan Kent's philosophy is the source of much of the film's internal and external debate. His famous line, "Maybe," in response to Clark asking if he should have let the children die, encapsulates his fear-driven morality. This culminates in the film's most emotionally devastating scene. A tornado strikes Smallville, and Jonathan refuses to let Clark save him, sacrificing his own life to protect his son's secret. This is a profound and tragic reinterpretation of the character, turning him into a man so terrified of the world's reaction that he is willing to die rather than risk exposing his son. This story breakdown reveals a Clark Kent who is not an eager hero, but a man burdened by his father's fear and searching for his place in a world he is not sure he can trust. The plot kicks into high gear when Lois Lane, a tenacious reporter, arrives in the Canadian Arctic to investigate an anomaly, a Kryptonian scout ship buried for millennia in the ice. Clark is also there, having been drawn to the ship. This section, with its stunning filming locations in British Columbia, serves as Clark's true call to action. Inside the ship, he discovers a command key left by Jor-El, which activates a holographic consciousness of his father. This is the full movie explains central exposition scene, where Clark and the audience learns the truth of his origin, his Kryptonian name Kal-El, and the symbol on his chest, which is not Insi but the crest of the House of El, meaning hope. It is here that Jor-El presents him with the iconic blue and red suit, revealed to be a Kryptonian undergarment. This moment of discovery is immediately followed by one of the film's most celebrated sequences, the first flight. The CGI breakdown of this scene reveals a staggering level of detail. Unlike previous iterations, this flight is not graceful or effortless. It is a violent, chaotic mastery of power. Clark stumbles, crashes, and struggles to control his abilities before finally soaring into the sky with a sonic boom that shatters the sound barrier. The visual effects here are revolutionary in their depiction of speed and power, using shaky cam and rapid zooms to convey an almost overwhelming sense of force. The scene is a moment of pure, unadulterated cinematic joy, a cathartic release for a character who has spent his entire life holding back. This catharsis is short-lived. By activating the ancient ship, Clark also sends a signal into deep space. A signal that is detected by General Zod and his crew, who have been wandering the galaxy in a state of suspended animation. Their arrival on Earth transforms the film's genre once again, shifting from a personal drama to a full-blown alien invasion thriller, with similar movies like War of the Worlds serving as a clear tonal inspiration. Zod delivers his ultimatum to the world, demanding they surrender Kal-El. This forces Clark to make his first major choice, to reveal himself to the world and trust humanity. He surrenders to the U.S. military, who in turn hand him over to Zod's second-in-command, faora-ul. This leads to one of the most intense and well-choreographed fight sequences in modern blockbuster history, the Battle of Smallville. Here, the visual effects and sound design work in terrifying concert to depict what a fight between superpowered Kryptonians would actually entail. Faora and her giant compatriot, Namek, move with impossible speed and brutal efficiency, laying waste to the town. This is one of the iconic scenes explained not just for its action, but for its narrative purpose. It is the first time Clark must fight beings who are his physical equal, and he is outmatched and unprepared for their military training. The CGI breakdown shows a seamless blend of practical effects, wirework, and digital augmentation to create a sense of grounded, bone-crunching impact. The scene is a brutal lesson for Clark. His power unchecked can cause as much destruction as that of his enemies. This realization sets the stage for the film's final cataclysmic act in Metropolis, where the themes of choice, consequence, and the immense cost of power will come to their tragic and controversial conclusion. From a financial standpoint, the screenplay and visual execution of Man of Steel represent a calculated and enormous bet, a case study in the modern blockbuster's risk-return ratio. The process begins with the script. The script development cost for a project of this magnitude, involving A-list talent like David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan, would have been significant. Based on industry standards at the time, the total cost from initial story treatment through multiple drafts and polishes could easily have ranged from $3 million to $7 million. This is a substantial upfront investment before a single frame is shot, but it is considered essential for a tentpole film, as the screenplay is the foundational blueprint for a $100 million asset. The script acquisition cost itself would be a fraction of this, but the real expense is in the iterative development process required to get a franchise launcher right. The true financial gamble, however, lay in the immense creative risk of the story's core premise. The decision to structure the film non-linearly, to present a somber and conflicted Superman, and to ground the character in a gritty, realistic world was a direct departure from the universally beloved and highly marketable Christopher Reeve iteration. This presented a challenging risk-return ratio. The potential return was enormous, capturing a new, younger audience and creating a franchise with the dramatic weight and prestige of the Dark Knight trilogy. The risk was equally massive, alienating the existing fan base and failing to connect with audiences who expected a more optimistic and traditional take on the character. This was not a safe bet. It was a high-stakes attempt to redefine a cultural icon, and any miscalculation could have resulted in a catastrophic write-off for the studio. This creative risk was amplified exponentially by the film's reliance on cutting-edge visual effects. The estimated VFX budget for Man of Steel likely consumed a colossal portion of the total $225 million production cost, with industry estimates placing it in the range of $80 to $100 million. This level of production spending on digital effects was a major financial decision. The entire third act, from the world engine's terraforming beam to the citywide battle in Metropolis, was almost entirely a digital creation. The ROI versus visual complexity is a constant calculation for studio executives. The more complex and photorealistic the visuals, the higher the cost. Warner Bros. was betting that the spectacle of seeing Superman in action with an unprecedented level of realism would be the film's primary marketing hook and would drive audiences to theaters in massive numbers. This created an immense post-production burn rate, as hundreds of artists at multiple VFX vendors like Weta Digital and Double Negative worked for months to complete the thousands of digital shots required. The risk-return ratio of this visual strategy was twofold. First, there was the technological risk. If the visual effects failed to look convincing, the entire film's credibility would collapse. The depiction of superspeed, heat vision, and flight had to be flawless to sell the grounded reality the story was aiming for. Second, there was the financial risk of a massive budget overrun, a common occurrence on VFX-heavy films. Efficient capital allocation efficiency is critical in managing these enormous costs. The studio was effectively gambling that the wow factor of the visuals would provide a story development ROI that far outweighed the enormous expenditure. The decision to make the destruction so extensive was also a calculated risk, betting that audiences would be thrilled by the spectacle. A bet that, as the film's critical reception would prove, did not entirely pay off. Ultimately, the story and visual approach of Man of Steel was a go-for-broke strategy. A conscious decision to accept a very high degree of financial and creative risk in the pursuit of an equally high franchise-defining reward. The intricate plot and challenging themes of Man of Steel left audiences with a host of burning questions that have fueled online discussions for over a decade. In this special intelligence annex, we will address some of the most persistent and highly searched queries, providing a definitive movie breakdown of the film's most debated moments. This is the full movie explained at a granular level. And once again, a full spoilers alert is in effect. One of the most profound and emotionally divisive questions that has dominated fan forums since 2013 is, Why didn't Clark save Jonathan Kent from the tornado? This moment is a fundamental departure from most previous Superman lore, and is crucial to understanding the psychological foundation of this specific version of the character. The answer is not about a lack of ability, but about a promise. In the film's narrative, Jonathan Kent has spent Clark's entire life instilling in him a deep-seated fear of what would happen if the world discovered his true nature. This fear is born of love and a desire to protect his son. When the tornado strikes and Jonathan is trapped with an injured leg, Clark is fully capable of saving him. However, Jonathan sees the other survivors on the overpass watching. He knows that if Clark moves at superspeed to save him, his secret will be exposed to the entire community, and in his mind, the life Clark has known would be over. Jonathan makes a conscious, split-second decision. He holds up his hand, signaling Clark to stay put. This is not a moment of Clark failing. It is a moment of Jonathan making the ultimate sacrifice to uphold the one lesson he has spent his life teaching. Protect the secret at all costs. From a screenplay analysis perspective, this event is the inciting wound for Clark Kent. It is the trauma that defines his lonely, wandering existence at the beginning of the film. He honors his father's sacrifice by staying hidden, but he is haunted by the question of whether it was the right choice. This deep-seated guilt and confusion is what Jor-El's holographic consciousness must help him overcome. This tragic moment is essential to the Man of Steel story breakdown. It establishes the immense personal stakes and the profound emotional burden that this Superman carries long before he ever puts on the suit. Another monumental query that continues to generate thousands of articles and video essays is, why was there so much destruction in Metropolis, and why didn't Superman do more to prevent it? This is perhaps the single most significant critique leveled against the film. The in-universe explanation is twofold. First, this is literally Superman's first day on the job. He is an inexperienced fighter with no formal training, facing a group of genetically engineered soldiers who have been training for their entire existence. The Battle of Smallville demonstrates that he is outmatched in terms of tactical skill. Second, the scale of the threat is unprecedented. General Zod doesn't just want to fight Superman, he wants to terraform the entire planet using the World Engine, a gravity weapon of unimaginable power. Superman's primary objective in the third act is not to have a clean fight, but to destroy the World Engine, a task that requires his full attention and power. The destruction of Metropolis is a direct consequence of Zod bringing the war to a populated area, using the city and its inhabitants as a weapon against Superman's morality. From a filmmaking and thematic perspective, the destruction serves a different purpose. Zack Snyder's visual style was intended to deconstruct the consequence-free violence common in many superhero films. The goal was to present a terrifyingly realistic depiction of what would actually happen if beings with the power of gods did battle in a modern city. The collapsing skyscrapers and terrified citizens were meant to ground the fantastical action in a sense of real-world horror and consequence. This creative choice, while visually spectacular, became the film's most controversial legacy. It directly led to some of the most persistent fan theories about the film's sequel, with many correctly predicting that the massive loss of life in Metropolis would be the catalyst that draws a vengeful Bruce Wayne into the conflict. Finally, a question that often arises from the film's internal logic is, what was the significance of the Kryptonian scout ship, and why was it on Earth? The film establishes that the ship is ancient, having crash-landed on Earth thousands of years ago. The prequel comic, as previously mentioned, established that it was piloted by Kara Zor-El, Clark's cousin, suggesting she was the first Kryptonian to arrive on our planet. This piece of lore is a critical element of universe expansion. It transforms Earth from a random sanctuary into a place of long-standing cosmic significance in Kryptonian history. The ship itself becomes a key plot device. It is Clark's fortress of solitude, his only tangible link to his heritage and the place where he receives his education from the Jor-El hologram. It is also the key to Zod's plan. He needs the ship's Genesis chamber to begin repopulating the Kryptonian race. The presence of this ship on Earth is the central coincidence upon which the entire plot rests. It is the reason Zod comes to Earth, and it is the tool Clark needs to understand who he is. This subtle piece of world building was a deliberate seed planted for future stories, a classic example of how a single plot element can lay the groundwork for an entire franchise. But what if all these fan theories and unanswered questions aren't just for fun? From a financial perspective, they are a deliberate and powerful tool for driving long-term asset value. These persistent questions, these endless debates over character choices and plot points, are the engine of sustained fan engagement. Every video essay debating Jonathan Kent's sacrifice, every forum thread arguing about the scale of destruction, acts as a form of free, organic marketing that keeps the Man of Steel IP in the cultural conversation. This is not just a narrative byproduct, it is a critical component of maximizing the IP lifecycle value. A film that is quietly enjoyed and then forgotten has a finite value. A film that is passionately debated for a decade has an ongoing, self-renewing relevance. This deliberate ambiguity and narrative controversy creates a powerful and enduring fan-driven ROI, ensuring that audiences keep coming back to the source material, driving home video sales, streaming views, and merchandise purchases years after the initial theatrical run. It's a brilliant financial strategy that transforms narrative complexity into a tangible, appreciating asset. A film of mythological scale requires a cast of commensurate talent, and the ensemble assembled for Man of Steel was a masterful blend of rising stardom and established gravitas. The casting choices were not merely about filling roles. They were strategic decisions designed to signal the film's serious artistic intentions and to provide a solid foundation of dramatic credibility for its more fantastical elements. This movie breakdown of the cast and characters is essential to understanding the human core of this epic production, and it reveals a fascinating story of risk, opportunity, and career-defining performances. For movie lovers, the story behind the scenes of how this ensemble came together is as compelling as the film itself. At the center of this cinematic universe was the casting of Superman himself, one of the most scrutinized decisions in modern Hollywood. The role of Clark Kent Kal-El went to Henry Cavill, a British actor who at the time was on the cusp of stardom but was not yet a household name. This was a classic star-making strategy. The casting news was met with cautious optimism. Fans were impressed by his imposing physique and classic jawline, but he was a relative unknown to mainstream audiences. The studio was betting that Cavill had the presence to embody the character, allowing the icon of Superman, rather than a pre-existing movie star, to be the primary draw. In retrospect, Cavill's performance is one of the film's most enduring legacies. He perfectly captured the quiet solitude and inner conflict of this new, more introspective Superman. His portrayal of a god trying to find his place among mortals became a fan-favorite performance, and the role would define his actor filmography for the next decade. To ground their rising star, the studio surrounded him with an A-list supporting cast of decorated veterans. The role of Lois Lane, the intrepid reporter, went to Amy Adams, a multiple Academy Award nominee. This was a significant piece of casting news, as Adams was known for her dramatic range and brought an immediate sense of prestige to the project. Her Lois was not a damsel in distress, but a capable, driven journalist who discovers Clark's secret through her own detective work. For the crucial role of Superman's two fathers, the studio secured two titans of the screen. Kevin Costner played Jonathan Kent, delivering a quiet, conflicted performance that was central to the film's controversial thematic core. On the Kryptonian side, Russell Crowe was cast as Jor-El, lending his powerful presence and gravitas to the role of Superman's biological father. Crowe's performance, largely as a holographic consciousness, gave the film's epic sci-fi elements a sense of historical weight and Shakespearean tragedy. Every great hero is defined by their villain, and in Michael Shannon's portrayal of General Zod, Man of Steel found a truly formidable and compelling antagonist. This is the character explained not as a simple megalomaniac, but as a tragic figure, a genetically engineered soldier whose only purpose is to protect Krypton. When his world dies, his purpose becomes a perverted, fanatical crusade. Shannon's performance is one of pure, terrifying intensity. His delivery of the line, "I will find him," became an instantly iconic moment. Critics at the time, even those who were mixed on the film as a whole, almost universally praised Shannon's work, and it remains one of the best movies of the cast for him. He created a villain whose motivations were understandable, even sympathetic, which made his final, nihilistic rampage all the more chilling. The extended cast was filled out with respected character actors who added depth and texture to the world, including Diane Lane as the warm and resilient Martha Kent, Lawrence Fishburne as the authoritative Perry White, and Antje Tra as the fiercely loyal and deadly Kryptonian warrior, faora-ul. Tra's performance in particular was a breakout moment, creating a secondary antagonist who was as memorable and intimidating as her commander. This ensemble approach was a key part of the film's strategy. By populating the world with performers of this caliber, the filmmakers ensured that even the smaller moments had dramatic heft. For movie fans, rewatching the film reveals the quality of these performances, which have helped cement its status as one of the most rewatchable movies in the modern superhero genre. From a financial perspective, the casting strategy for Man of Steel was a sophisticated exercise in budget allocation and risk management. The total compensation for the cast of a film this size can be a significant portion of its production budget, and the studio's approach reveals a clear tiered strategy designed to maximize star power while controlling costs. This strategy was heavily reliant on a key financial tool, back-end participation. At the top tier were the established A-list stars, Russell Crowe, Kevin Costner, and Amy Adams. Their estimated upfront actor salaries would have been substantial. Based on industry standards in 2013, for actors of their stature in a major tentpole film, their individual fees could have ranged from $5 million to as high as $10 million each. However, to secure talent of this caliber without bloating the budget, it is highly probable that their deals included a significant element of back-end participation. This is a form of profit sharing, where an actor agrees to a lower upfront salary in exchange for a percentage of the film's profits after it reaches certain financial milestones. This is a powerful tool for a studio. It incentivizes the star to promote the film heavily and aligns their financial interests with the studio's. It also shifts some of the financial risk. If the film underperforms, the studio has saved millions on upfront costs. The second tier was the film's lead, Henry Cavill. As a rising star, not yet a proven box office draw, his upfront salary would have been considerably lower, likely in the range of $500,000 to $1 million. This is a standard practice for franchise starters. The real financial prize for an actor in his position is not the first film's salary, but the lucrative multi-picture deal and the escalating salary that comes with subsequent films if the franchise is a success. His star power ROI was a long-term bet for the studio. The initial investment was low, but if he became synonymous with Superman, his value to the franchise would be immense. The final tier consists of the villain and key supporting actors like Michael Shannon, Diane Lane, and Lawrence Fishburne. Their salaries would have been negotiated based on their individual quotes at the time, likely falling in the $2 million to $4 million range. For an actor like Michael Shannon, a critically acclaimed but not yet mainstream star, a major blockbuster role like Zod would significantly increase his future earning potential. The studio likely allocated an estimated 15–20% of the total $225 million production budget, or roughly $35 to $45 million, to the entire cast's upfront compensation. This is a relatively efficient cost allocation for a film with such a deep bench of talent. The key to this efficiency was almost certainly the strategic use of back-end participation for the biggest names. While a risky proposition for the talent, the potential for a massive payout from a successful blockbuster makes back-end participation a highly sought-after component of any A-lister's compensation packages. For Man of Steel, this financial maneuvering allowed the studio to secure a prestigious, high-impact cast without compromising the enormous budget required for its groundbreaking visual effects. The official movie trailer for Man of Steel, dropping with teaser release moments that sparked massive fan buzz, set the stage for a premiere event rivaling any competitor's press tour excitement. While a sophisticated and multi-pronged digital campaign built theatrical release hype across the globe. The marketing of a modern blockbuster is a campaign of shock and awe, a multi-million-dollar operation designed to achieve total cultural saturation. For a film tasked with rebooting the world's most recognizable superhero and launching an entire cinematic universe, the campaign for Man of Steel was one of the most ambitious and meticulously crafted of its time. It was a masterclass in tone setting, brand partnerships, and the art of building near unprecedented levels of anticipation. The campaign began not with a bang but with a whisper. The first teaser release, which debuted in the summer of 2012 attached to screenings of The Dark Knight Rises, was a work of art in its own right. There were two versions, each featuring the same evocative, Terrence Malick-inspired imagery of a wandering Clark Kent. What made them unique was the voiceover. One version featured Jor-El Russell Crowe speaking of his son's destiny, while the other featured Jonathan Kent, Kevin Costner speaking of the man he would become. Set to the soaring score of Howard Shore's The Fellowship of the Ring, the teaser was pure emotion. It showed almost no action, instead focusing on establishing the film's serious mythic tone. This initial teaser generated enormous trailer hype, signaling to audiences that this was not just another superhero movie. This was an event. As the theatrical release date of June 14, 2013 approached, the marketing machine roared to life. The full-length movie trailer was a stunning piece of work, a perfect distillation of the film's dual nature. It began with the same somber, emotional tone of the teaser, but then erupted into a symphony of explosive, large-scale action, showcasing the breathtaking visual effects and the terrifying power of General Zod. This trailer, set to Hans Zimmer's now iconic thunderous score, is what truly ignited mainstream release excitement. The fan reactions were overwhelming, with the trailer racking up tens of millions of views in its first few days, a massive number for the 2013 digital landscape. Warner Bros. Saturated the airwaves with TV spots, each one highlighting a different aspect of the film: the romance, the family drama, the epic action, to appeal to the widest possible demographic. The campaign's brilliance, however, lay in its innovative brand partnerships and digital engagement. Warner Bros. Partnered with a wide array of major brands, from Nokia to Sears, creating a web of cross-promotion that placed the iconic S shield everywhere. One of the most talked-about elements was a viral campaign centered around General Zod's "You Are Not Alone" message, which hijacked websites and TV channels, creating a sense of an immersive, real-world event. This was a sophisticated evolution of traditional marketing, designed to engage a younger, more digitally native audience. The global press tour saw the cast, including Henry Cavill and Amy Adams, travel the world, culminating in a massive premiere event in New York City. By the time the worldwide release arrived, Man of Steel was not just a movie. It was a global cultural phenomenon. The ultimate success of this campaign would be measured in the opening weekend box office breakdown, the moment of truth for the studio's 9-figure marketing investment. For those seeking the full movie explained as a business case, the marketing campaign is a textbook example of how to position a blockbuster for maximum impact. This monumental marketing effort was fueled by one of the largest P&A budgets of its era. P&A stands for prints and advertising, the two core components of a film's marketing cost. In 2013, the estimated P&A budget for a global tentpole like Man of Steel was in the range of $150 million to $200 million, an investment nearly as large as the production budget itself. Understanding the allocation of this capital is key to evaluating its marketing spend ROI. The largest single expenditure within the P&A budget was for media buying costs. This is the money spent to purchase advertising space. For Man of Steel, this meant tens of millions of dollars were spent on primetime TV spots during major sporting events and popular television shows, where a single 30-second ad could cost upwards of $300,000. Millions more were allocated to online advertising, trailer placements before other major films, and massive billboard and print campaigns. The other major cost is prints, which in 2013 largely referred to the creation of digital hard drives (DCPs) that were shipped to thousands of theaters worldwide, a process overseen by the distributor. For their services in booking theaters, shipping prints, and collecting revenue, the distributor typically charges distribution fees, which can range from 8% to 15% of the film's gross rentals. The ultimate goal of this enormous P&A budget is to drive a successful theatrical release and generate a positive marketing spend ROI. The profitability of this is determined by the theatrical revenue split. In the domestic market, a studio like Warner Bros. Typically receives around 50% of the box office gross. For Man of Steel, which grossed $291 million domestically, this translated to approximately $145.5 million in theatrical rentals. Internationally, the split is less favorable, averaging around 40%. From its $377 million international gross, the studio would have received about $150.8 million. This brings the total worldwide theatrical net revenue to just under $300 million. Now we can calculate a rough marketing spend ROI. With an all-in cost of roughly $425 million, a $225 M production budget, and a high-end $200 M P&A budget, and a theatrical net of $300 million, the film did not recoup its costs from the box office alone. It lost approximately $125 million on its initial run. However, the film's massive marketing push created enormous brand awareness, which directly fueled its colossal success in ancillary markets like home entertainment and international sales for television rights, where it would ultimately find its profitability. Key stat: for a major 2010s blockbuster, home entertainment and television rights could often generate an additional 60–80% of the film's total theatrical net revenue within the first 18 months of release. While the direct theatrical marketing spend ROI was negative, the campaign's role in establishing Man of Steel as a must-own home video title and a premium asset for streaming licensing deals in the years to come was critical to its long-term financial success. The P&A budget was an investment not just in the opening weekend, but in the creation of a durable, long-term media asset. Fans of The Dark Knight Rises' genre-defining realism and Iron Man 3's heart-pounding action will find Man of Steel bridges both worlds, delivering blockbuster storytelling moments that rival franchise-level hits now streaming on HBO Max or Disney+. To render a final verdict on the legacy of Man of Steel, one cannot view it in isolation. It was a film born of intense competition, a calculated response to a cinematic landscape that had been fundamentally reshaped by its rivals. Its identity, its creative choices, and its ultimate box office performance were all defined by the towering successes that preceded it. This final movie breakdown, therefore, is a competitive analysis, a look at how this film compares to the other giants of its era. The most direct and significant box office competition for Man of Steel was Marvel Studios' Iron Man 3, released just 1 month prior in the summer of 2013. The franchise comparisons between the burgeoning DCEU and the then unstoppable MCU were the central narrative of the blockbuster season. The two films could not have been more different in their approach to the superhero genre. Iron Man 3 was the confident victory lap of a well-established universe, a witty, character-driven action comedy that focused on Tony Stark's PTSD after the events of the Avengers. It was light on its feet, self-aware, and built on the immense charisma of its star, Robert Downey Jr. It was, in essence, the perfect encapsulation of the Marvel brand. In this comparison with other films, Man of Steel stands in stark, deliberate contrast. It was a somber, epic, and almost overwhelmingly serious mythological origin story. Where Iron Man 3 was focused on the man inside the suit, Man of Steel was focused on the god trying to find the man within. This tonal difference was reflected in their box office fortunes. Iron Man 3 soared to a colossal $214 billion worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing film of 2013. This set an impossibly high bar. The subsequent box office breakdown for Man of Steel revealed a worldwide gross of $668 million. While objectively a very large number and a profitable venture, it was just over half of what its primary competitor had earned. This disparity is crucial to the full movie explained from a historical perspective. It demonstrated that, at that moment in time, the global audience had a much stronger appetite for Marvel's lighter, more comedic brand of heroism than for DC's darker, more deconstructionist approach. However, the more interesting comparison is not with Marvel, but with the film Man of Steel was designed to succeed. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy. These films are the most critical similar movies for contextualizing Warner Bros. strategy. Nolan's films had redefined the genre, proving that superhero stories could be prestigious, critically acclaimed, and grounded in a recognizable reality. Man of Steel inherited this mandate. With Nolan serving as a producer and his name heavily featured in the marketing, the film was positioned as a spiritual successor, a Nolan-esque take on Superman. It adopted the desaturated color palette, the serious tone, and the focus on psychological realism. For many viewers, this was a thrilling proposition, and it is why the film still holds a special place among fan favorites who craved a more mature take on the character. Yet this is also where the comparison reveals a fundamental challenge. The realism of Batman is the realism of a determined man in a crime-ridden city. The realism of Superman is the realism of an alien god fighting a terraforming machine. The attempt to apply the same grounded aesthetic to a character of such immense, otherworldly power created a unique and sometimes dissonant experience. While it was not a direct sequel, the shadow of The Dark Knight Rises loomed large, and Man of Steel's inability to match its critical acclaim or its billion-dollar box office created the perception of an underperformance. It was a film caught between two worlds, trying to honor the legacy of Nolan's grounded vision while simultaneously launching a fantastical, cosmic universe of its own. This ambitious and arguably impossible task is what makes it one of the most fascinating and endlessly debatable top films in its genre. From a financial analyst's perspective, the competitive landscape of summer 2013 was a high-stakes battle for market dominance, and every studio's market share projection was an aggressive bid for a piece of a finite box office pie. Warner Bros.' market share projection for Man of Steel was undoubtedly modeled on the billion-dollar performances of The Avengers and The Dark Knight Rises. They were not aiming to release a successful superhero film, they were aiming to release the cultural event of the year. The comparative revenue tells the story of how that projection met reality. With Iron Man 3 capturing a massive $1.2 billion share, the market had already crowned its champion for the year. Man of Steel's $668 million, while securing a significant secondary share, represented a failure to meet that top-tier benchmark. This outcome must be viewed through a saturation risk assessment. The summer of 2013 was not an open field, it was a crowded and fiercely competitive market. Beyond Iron Man 3, audiences also had Star Trek Into Darkness, $467 million, Fast and Furious 6 $788 million, and World War Z, $540 million, all vying for their attention and dollars. This high level of competition created a significant saturation risk. a danger that audiences would simply be fatigued by the constant onslaught of large-scale spectacle. Man of Steel's strategy to mitigate this risk was its unique tone. It offered a somber, operatic alternative to the quippy action of its rivals. This strategy was partially successful. It carved out its own audience, but it also limited its appeal, preventing it from achieving the four-quadrant universal success of its main competitor. The final verdict comes down to a direct budget versus performance analysis. Man of Steel carried an immense budget of approximately $225 million. Its $668 million gross represents a return of just under 3x its production cost at the box office. By contrast, Iron Man 3, with a slightly smaller $200 million budget, delivered a return of over 6x. This is a stark difference in efficiency. In the early 2010s, the genre ROI average for a top-tier franchise-launching blockbuster was expected to be in the 4x to 5x range to be considered an unqualified smash hit. Key stat, while profitable, Man of Steel's 3x ROI multiplier placed it significantly below the established ROI benchmarks set by its direct competitors, signaling to investors that the new DC universe had a more challenging path to profitability ahead. In conclusion, the case file for Man of Steel is one of qualified success in the face of monumental expectation. It successfully established a financial foothold and launched a multi-billion-dollar franchise in a market with an extremely high saturation risk. However, it failed to meet its ambitious market share projection and underperformed against the key financial benchmarks of its time. It was a film that made a respectable profit but lost the perception battle, a foundational asset that was simultaneously solid enough to build upon and flawed enough to ensure that the structure built atop it would be forever turbulent. Man of Steel 2013 Movie Breakdown. The financial blueprint of a universe. Welcome to Film Finance, the case file archive for the financial history of Hollywood. On this channel, we exclusively analyze films released more than 10 years ago. This is a complete financial analysis of the Man of Steel 2013 Movie Breakdown, exploring the historical context of its ambitious box office performance and the full production budget. This deep dive covers everything from the strategic actor salaries to the franchise-defining ending explained, providing the definitive look at how this film became the controversial cornerstone of the DC extended universe. This in-depth analysis covers the controversial ending explained, a complete analysis of the film's divisive climax, Superman's choice to kill General Zod, and how this single creative decision dictated the narrative and financial roadmap for the entire DCEU. The ambitious box office breakdown, a deep dive into the film's $668 million worldwide gross, its break-even point, and why its respectable profit was still viewed as a strategic underperformance compared to its Marvel competitors. The high-stakes production budget, the full financial breakdown of the massive $225 million budget, analyzing the capital allocation between its groundbreaking visual effects and its prestigious cast. Launching a universe, franchise potential and risk, an examination of how Man of Steel served as the foundational asset for a multi-billion-dollar franchise, and how its polarizing reception created a high-risk, high-reward path forward for Warner Bros. The strategic actor salaries and casting. A look at the financial strategy behind casting a rising star in Henry Cavill, supported by an A-list ensemble, and how their compensation packages were structured to mitigate risk. Marketing a modern myth. An inside look at the monumental 150M+ marketing campaign designed to reintroduce Superman to a new generation, and the ROI of its innovative viral components. At Film Finance, we chart the economic currents of cinema history. The story of Man of Steel is a fascinating case study in modern franchise-building, a film that was both a profitable success and a strategic disappointment. It stands as a testament to the immense financial pressures of the cinematic universe era and the lasting, multi-billion-dollar consequences of a single controversial creative choice. Disclaimer. This video is educational and analytical, based on publicly available data and industry reports. All rights belong to Warner Bros. Pictures and Legendary Pictures. This analysis is intended for educational purpose and discussion. Support the film by watching it legally on Max, renting or purchasing it on official platforms. Man of Steel Movie Breakdown Film Analysis, Zack Snyder DCEU Henry Cavill Box Office.
If you enjoyed this historical analysis, please like this video and subscribe to Film Finance for more deep dives into Hollywood's financial past. What classic movie's financial story should we investigate next? Let us know in the comments below.